Good afternoon. My name is Brenda Sheik. Today is June 10th, 2014, and we're at the Oklahoma County Cooperative Extension Office in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, interviewing Dr. Mike Johnston as part of the Voices of Extension Oral History Project. So thank you for joining us.
Well, Brenda, thank you for inviting me.
Tell us a little bit about your early life. When and where were you born?
I was born in Duncan, Oklahoma, which is in Stevens County, in the southern part of the state. We're about 18 miles from, as crow flies, from Texas, so that's as close as I wanted to get to Texas for all those years. And my father had worked for the DX Sunray there as during the war, and he and my mother got married, a school teacher. Taught for 40 years there in Stevens County in the Comanche Public School District. And they got married, and I had my sister in 41, I guess, and then I was born in 1947. And when I was a month old, they moved out to what became Johnston J. Bar Ranch, farm south of Comanche. And they actually moved 3 homes and put them together to make the home. So interesting beginning, and I remember that old home to this day. And Dad farmed and ranched, and probably at the peak we had probably 3,000 acres of grass and about 1,500 acres of wheat and 350 acres of alfalfa and around about 400 mother cows and 1,500 steers in the winter. So it got to be a pretty good operation. My dad and my brother and I and a hired hand would pretty well do most of the work and whatever. So it was a great place to grow up. At that time, my dad had 7 brothers and 2 sisters, and they all lived there in Comanche. So I had 18 cousins going to school at the same time. So my mother was an English teacher, my aunt was a math teacher, my cousin was a football coach and a science teacher. So I was a good boy. And I got involved in 4-H through Mom. Mom was a 4-H leader there in the junior high, and so I got involved with 4-H early on. And it was kind of a community affair. Everyone, all the neighbor kids and everything were involved in 4-H. And I kind of got excessive with it to a certain extent. At 9, I won the state demonstration contest. I was very active in the livestock judging and went all over the state and, with the judging team. Hayden Hobbs was our assistant county agent. Fine fellow, and was very instrumental in helping me as a young man grow and experience a lot of things on my own. My dad, my mom encouraged us to be self-reliant, and we went to the fields, and we were expected to work and take care of and fix and make decisions early on in life. And my experiences in 4-H were aided there tremendously, because the 4-H gave me those skills of how to speak, how to interact with people. I had difficulty memorizing speeches, for the speech contest. All of mine were extemporaneous. I started with a subject, and then we just went on. My demonstration at 9 was taking a 5-quart oil can and making a photographic print machine out of it. And so when I got to the state contest, I was so nervous I couldn't remember the outline and what have you, so I just got up there and demonstrated. So it turned out to be okay.
Must have.
And so I was real involved with entomology, and participated and was a state contest winner there, And then also, I was the first light horse project winner in the state back when there weren't any scholarships or anything to be won, but that was an honor I enjoyed. Our meetings there in Comanche, was usually a group of the cousins a lot of times and the neighbor kids that we would have meetings that were and have some type of interaction with the county agent. The county agent at that time was Ed Gregory, fine gentleman, really a class kind of a guy, and and I forget who the home economics agents were at that time, but I just have very good memories of those folks being very positive role models.
Going back to kind of fill in some of the gaps.
Okay.
What were your parents' names?
Johnny A. Johnston, that's Johnie, and Bernice O. Johnston. And they were both from Comanche. My grandmothers all came from Arkansas in about 1890, 1891, somewhere in there.
What was your mother's maiden name?
Selby, Bernice Selby.
Okay. S-E-L-B-Y?
S-E-L-B-Y.
You mentioned a older sister
Yeah.
that was born in 41, and then later you mentioned farming with a brother.
Yeah.
Tell me about your siblings, their ages, their names.
Yeah. My sister, Elizabeth Burchell Johnston, or Johnston Burchell, I guess is the way it's supposed to be. She went on to college, got her degree and a master's, and I think she even has a PhD in education, and resides in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. My brother went on to get a degree in industrial arts and has been a laborer of some kind for all these years.
What was your brother's name?
Joe.
And where does he reside?
I think he lives in Houston right now.
Okay. And you talked about your parents and your father farming, had a fairly large size farming operation, and your mother as a teacher for 40 years. What other than 4-H, were they as adults involved with extension programming?
Well, of course, with the farm, we had the county agent would help us as far as some of the soil test. We put in a improved grass pastures with plains blue stems, so that was important to have the Extension Service give us some guidance in as far as how to implement that crop. And occasionally we would have interaction with the Extension Service or with the Soil Conservation Service, either one, as far as implementing some of those husbandry practices we had. And then with our cattle operation, I showed calves for, I don't know, I guess I had 6 or 8 show calves over the years. And so the county agent would help us select the calf from our herd generally, and he had some input as to what type of bulls that we would needed to have competitive show animals at that time.
Your mother worked outside the home. Did she happen to belong to what was referred to as home demonstration clubs?
Oh, yes. Moran Schools was an old school that was just a mile from our house, and the Moran home demonstration group or whatever, they met. Mom met with him. Oh gosh, she died when she was 97, and I bet she was in her 90s when they last met. And I have a picture of the ladies. There were about 18 widow ladies that lived south of Comanche there that all had kids that were my age, and they still got together for the Moran home demonstration.
And how are you spelling that? Was that M-O-R-A-N? Is
Right,
that
Moran.
Moran? Moran. And as a child, did you ever go to club with her?
Oh gosh, yeah, you had to.
Was it an all-day? Describe their club meetings.
Well, you know, I wasn't paying much attention to them whenever I went. I was trying to find something else to do with one of the other kids. But they'd have some lesson, and when Mother got home fast, well, then I would go down and she'd show me some of the things, and they'd go through their lesson plan. They'd have a lesson that they were going to present. And one of the ladies would present, you know, how to pickle, and then they'd have a pickling demonstration, and then they'd always have their desserts, and they always tried to outdo each other. And there were some fabulous cooks in that neighborhood.
When they met, did they meet for the entire day, or was it an afternoon?
It was probably an afternoon. As time went on, it probably got a little longer because they didn't have the constraints of kids and home duties as they did early on.
So you have talked about some of your projects. Going back just a little bit to you mentioned a project that you were one of the first state leaders. Did you call it Light Horse?
Yeah, there's a Light Horse. Always liked when you were going for the little buttons or the little badges or whatever. Well, there would be different projects or that you would pursue, and the Light Horse project was one of the like beef cattle production, beef calf production. Well, that would be one of the things that you'd pursue.
And was that description, Light Horse, was that based on weight? Is that what that light refers to?
Well, in horses, light horses are quarter horses, using type horses. Heavy horses are draft horses and such. So.
See, I learned something.
Yeah, a little bit of everything. See, and so that kind of, well, my father, from the time I was maybe 5 years old, if anybody asked me what I was going to do when I grew up, well, before I could say anything, Dad said he's going to be a veterinarian. And my dad had a great admiration for his dad, who was the person that they brought all the sick animals to in the neighborhood back in the 20s and 30s and 40s to take care of. And so he thought I should be the veterinarian. And so as time went along, I kind of bought into it. And then also with we had about, at one point we probably had 30 horses at the farm. And I rodeoed for a living for a while, and I put myself through part of my college education as a professional calf roper and bulldogger. So there was a lot of that early training and involvement that kind of pushed me towards what I'm doing today, and that's what I am as an equine practitioner. My mom, when asked what I do for a living, she says, I don't know what he does, but he spends a lot of time on the south end of a northbound horse. And so she is a very proper lady and didn't want to have to describe exactly what I was doing.
Those were good terms for her to use.
Good terms.
That everybody understood. So, do you remember you've talked about some of the county agents, some of the staff. Do you remember some of the 4-H leaders?
Yes. I was privileged to go on the People to People tour in 1964, I believe it was. And let's see, his name was Ira. I don't remember his last name, but it's been 50 years ago. but he was a state 4-H leader, and he was one of our chaperones. And that was, I had never spent a night away from home before leaving and being gone for 30 days with 55 4-H kids and touring. I think we toured 11 countries in 30 days.
So I am not familiar with the people-to-people tour. Can you describe that?
Well, the people-to-people tour was when we were trying, the government was trying to make the European or other countries aware of interaction of our people. So we had tours from, say, Europe, or a country in Europe that would come over here and they'd tour the United States to see what the people, they were thinking that if you got to know the people a little bit, you might not be as willing to go to war with them, to put it in a very simple terminology. But ours was an agricultural tour, and we went to Denmark, Germany, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, France, Belgium, England, Scotland. Now, the funny thing about it was, here we're agriculture, and we get over there, and what's the agriculture of a lot of those countries was vineyards and wine. And so it was a new experience to go to a vineyard and sample the wine for a 14, 15-year-old kid. But it was interesting and this was during the Cold War, and the Berlin Wall was there, and we got to tour that. We got to go into East Germany through Checkpoint Charlie, and just a few days before we went through, someone had been killed there trying to escape, and it was eye-opening to see the contrast in what we grew up with and the openness of our society and how closed and guarded their society was.
How did you get selected to go on that tour?
It was activities within the 4-H. I was not only in a local and county officer, but I was a Southwest District President, and I ran for the state presidency in I guess it was 1964.
And you were gone a full month?
Yeah, 31 days.
How many other kids went on the tour?
There were 55 of us.
And were they from Oklahoma or
just
nationwide?
Oklahoma?
From Oklahoma?
Yeah, just the Oklahoma group. We left out of Oklahoma City here and flew to a foreign country, New York City, and that was an eye-opener to be there right downtown. The hotel we stayed in was in the downtown of Oklahoma City. One of the unique things that happened on our tour, not only the going into Checkpoint Charlie, but when we flew out of Berlin into Hungary, the plane was a DC-8 or a prop plane, and it flew very low because of the ban on flights, and they couldn't deviate very much. And we get to Budapest, our guides are arrested because they didn't have the visa they were supposed to. We go out into the lobby of the airport, and there's armed guards with machine guns. The machine guns set up as machine gun nests. They're in the airport. So we thought we were in big trouble. And then the Hungarian people were very, very warm, very nice people. And then Czechoslovakia was very nice. We really enjoyed being there. The language barrier was not that great. We had most people in Europe at that time, their second language was English, and so we could fairly communicate. You know, if they didn't speak, they understood enough, and it was great.
Where did you stay while you were on the tour? Was it in people's homes or in hotels?
No, it'd be in hotels. It'd be hotel. Typically, we'd fly in the evening or at night, get up the next morning, and we'd go and tour a farm or a agricultural processing plant. In Denmark, we went to a chicken processing plant, which was got me in some trouble. At the lunching that afternoon, after touring the plant, we have this 7-course meal, and one of them was a Cornish hen or a squab or something like that. And the young lady sitting next to me, when she stuck her fork in it, I said squawk, and so she didn't eat her chicken. Let me say that. I was in trouble. So there was, and I was, what was I? I was 15 years old.
If you were born in 47 and that took place in 64, yeah, that's about right.
About right. And but it was here again, the self-reliance. I had to be up. I had to meet my bus. I had to have my stuff. I didn't leave anything. I didn't miss any places. I didn't get arrested. And I still had fun, learned a lot, met a lot of people. And you know, there were 4 or 5 of us guys that, like in Berlin, I mean, here we are in Berlin, West Berlin, and we decided we want some ice cream. So we passed one coming in, a little ice cream shop coming in, so we go hiking it down the street in the middle of the night to get some ice cream. And Glasgow, Scotland, we're there, and we decided we were hungry, and how about some fish and chips? So we go, I don't know, 4 or 5 blocks down. I don't know if it was good neighborhood or bad neighborhood, but here we go. And for a kid from Oklahoma, it was a new world.
And this was your first trip away from home?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. But
how did, do you remember if there was a fee to go on that? Or
you had to pay your own expenses, you know, your flights and things like that. But as far as being having to pay for meals or lodging or anything like that, I think it was there was an amount you had to raise to supplement it, and then it took, I think you may had to have provided to get to New York or something like that. To fund that, I raffled off a calf that we had raised, and the local home economics group, the Moran School Group, helped promote that and raffled it off, and then they gave it back to me, the ones that won it, and I sold it as the first steer to go through the new livestock sale barn there at Comanche in that year. So I got to sell him twice, and then we had a couple of bean suppers and things like that to help fund it. And I was very fortunate that I got selected, and then even more fortunate that the community was behind me to allow me to go on it. And I think I took 490 pictures on that trip, and and I still have them today. I still pull them out every now and then.
Do you remember any of the other 4-H members that went on that trip?
Oh yes. See, this fellow Pete Teal was a fellow that I got real close to, and from Western Oklahoma, and then a couple of the girls went to college at Oklahoma State University. Suzanne Pullman, and there was one of them, and but there were Bodnell Goldson. There were several of them that I saw in college, and was involved in Key Club at least my freshman year in college, and then I got busy with other things and got away from 4-H that much. But it was a good experience.
Back in your younger days of 4-H,
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever go to 4-H camp, or can you just
yes.
do that?
Well, the summer camp was a big deal. I mean, it was super. We would go to an OSU research station down on Lake Texoma, and spent a few days, and I think it was 4 or 5 days, something like that. And we got to swim in the river and make birdhouses and do some fun things. But that was always good to go. I think I went 2 or 3 times to that, and when I said on the people trip being gone first night away, it was the first night that I'd spent where I'd gone out of state, I guess would be the way to say it. But it was, and it was nice in that several of my cousins and neighbors would go in 4-H camp at the same time. So there were always a group that were very familiar, and we'd stay in the dormitory there and do different projects and whatever.
Looking back on your involvement with 4-H, is there anything of interest historically that you remember, either meeting someone famous or a new invention or just a change or the first or the last?
Right. Well, the part about the people to people, I guess, was the historic part of it, and how our 4-H, our state 4-H organization, allowed us to go participate in this people to people, and I think that that broadened my knowledge and appreciation of the United States. We hear all this, oh, this is a sorry place to live. This is all these things are wrong with it. Well, all anybody has to do is either go down into deep into Mexico, or go into one of these countries that were in the Iron Curtain, or the dichotomy of West Berlin and East Berlin in 1964. You know, bustling economy, bustling people, even though it was isolated in West Berlin. You go across Checkpoint Charlie and there are no cars. There are no people on the sidewalks. It was, and people with machine guns, and the fear factor was there all the time. Same in Hungary, not so much in Czechoslovakia, but you still saw I've got a picture of what I call the highway department in Czechoslovakia. It was a cart and a cow with two people with a scythe and a pitchfork, and they were cleaning the weeds off the side of the road. And but it was, you drop back, this is 1964, so you were dropping back into the 50s by just going across a national boundary.
Big contrast.
Big contrast. I remember prepping us for the trip. They said, now, when you go over there, no cowboy hats, no cowboy boots. When people ask you how many cars you have, you tell them you have an old beat-up Ford and a pickup or something like that. In other words, they didn't want us to come across as the big Yankees and all this. But you know, today probably it's not as big a deal, but back then, you know, we didn't get TVs until 1952 or 3. So, and they were only, you know, you'd get up in the morning and you'd wait for the symbol to go away before the programming started, and then you'd listen to the farm show and maybe a cartoon before you went to school.
You had to wait for the tube to warm up.
Right. And there was one TV, and it was black and white, and it was a little 10-inch or something like that. But my kids, well, even myself, you know, I've got too many TVs in the house, you know, now, and spend too much time just relying on that rather than reading. And so we, and my kids are out of school and carrying on their lives now, and are trying to. My son is a investment banker, and I got him at 4-H, got me involved with other kids and doing things in my community and my state. My son, I got him into Boy Scouts, and I'm proud to say he's an Eagle Scout. And we've gone all the high adventures. We've gone all over the United States and all over Oklahoma. So he got exposed to a lot of different areas in Oklahoma, and here again, that self-reliance and being able to communicate and interact with adults as well as young people have complemented his life and what he does now. He's an investment banker. He's got the gift of the gab, and he can speak with people and communicate with them and relate to them, whether he's a CEO of a big company or the guy that's picking up the trash every day. And I admire that quality that he has. My daughter danced with Oklahoma City Ballet for 6 years, and now she just graduated with a degree in chemistry and biology, and has a job as a research assistant, and will be applying med school. So both kids, because of my wife and I's lives and what we saw that was important, that being able to communicate and having a good solid base family was important. And I think that's what 4-H and I have to say that Mr. Hobbs put up with a lot of trouble with us boys and the different things that we did. One of the interesting things about our growing up was when I was a senior, there were 4 of us. We were called the 4 cousins. 2 of us were cousins. One was a neighbor and one was another kid. But we had a little singing group. Now, my other cousin, Sue, she was in a trio that was, they were fabulous. But they've been singing every place all these years, and everybody had heard them before. So here come 4 boys. 2 could sing, 2 couldn't. But we were just hilarious, and we were in share of the fun. Then we went to the state. Were asked to sing at the General Assembly, and then we were asked to sing at the governor's dinner there at the 4-H Roundup. And they asked us if we wanted to sit within the banquet or be fed down below, and so we went down to the cafeteria, and they said, we'll come and get you. Such as, well, they come up and they were all upset that we were late, and so we come in and we apologized for being late. And so I remember the song that we had was Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and so I said, well, we were always cutting up. We never knew what we were going to do when we walked out there. And so we did it double time, and then we did it triple time. And our pianist was Miss Ladd was our instructor in chorus. And she just jumped. She never knew. She says, you guys keep me in stitches. And because somebody would haul off and whack one of them while they were out there, do something every time. So it was the comfort of those being out in front of people and being within us. And those 4 boys, one of them's a Baptist preacher, one is had a very successful business for many years, and then my cousin has a luggage company, and I think they have 4 or 5 stores in Houston. So very successful. All of them were 4-Hers, and very active in the clubs, both local and county.
And use those abilities later on.
Right, and we're very comfortable with people and did well in school and those things. I saw that too whenever I first went I was a baby boomer, so I came to OSU before they had the dormitories and everything, and they stuck 5 guys in an apartment out in what's now married student housing, and they'd just built them. They just had the holes for the trees. They didn't even have the trees in it, or any landscaping, or any sod, or anything. And I remember they had white floors, white linoleum floors, and red dirt outside, and 5 boys. That first semester I had 11 roommates, because there was a great turnover in those that were there just to come to school. And there was a little function going over in Southeast Asia that took care of a lot of the guys that dropped out and what have you. And it's also a very good incentive to stay in school. But my ability to, my mother took me up, dropped me off. I didn't have a car. I knew one other person on campus. And I was able to survive and make decisions that changed my life. I mean, I had an advisor that put me in 21 hours of courses, hardcore courses my first semester. And I saw that was too much for me. And so I rearranged my schedule to where I became comfortable rather than potentially failing.
Could survive it.
Right. And I did very well. And one of the little stories I have about school, I had called into the dean's office and I didn't understand why. And I get in there and said, "Hey, Mr. Johnston, you having a good time at school?" And I said, "Oh, sure, it's okay." He said, "Well, making any classes?" I said, "Yeah, I haven't missed a class yet." And he said, "Well, from what our records show, you haven't made a class yet." And I said, "I haven't missed a class." He says, "You're failing in everything." I said, "No, I'm at the top of my class in everything." And well, you haven't paid your tuition. I said, "Wait a minute. Your parents sent you the money." They said, "Your parents sent you the money and you didn't pay your tuition." I said, "Wait a minute. My parents didn't pay my tuition. I paid my tuition. I wrote the check. And I've been to every class." And they said, "Well, your name John A. Michael Johnston?" I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "Are you from Henrietta, Oklahoma?" I said, "No, sir." So in 1965, College of Agriculture, Oklahoma State University, there were two John A. Michael Johnstons. And I think one didn't stay in school very long.
I was going to say, that might have taken care of itself pretty soon.
Took care of itself. So
what, you have talked a little bit about college. What major did you choose?
Well, veterinary medicine was what I went into, pre-vet when I enrolled, and all my coursework, and I applied after 2 years and was the second alternate. And I'm thankful that I didn't get accepted because I was 17 when I went up there. And actually I could have graduated from high school at 16, but I wanted to play ball, so I stayed around another year. So I got a degree in agriculture after my second year in veterinary school, but then went on to veterinary school.
There at OSU?
At OSU.
Did you ever consider, I know that was something that your father had always mentioned when you were younger, did you ever consider anything else?
When I didn't get accepted the first year?
Just at any time?
I had already enrolled in agronomy, and I was going to go back and farm and when I got my degree. And so I went in for my second interview at veterinary school, and I remember one of the instructors turned out to be a very good friend, and until his passing was a very good friend and a colleague and a mentor over the years. I remember him asking, "Well, Mr. Johnston, if you don't get accepted this year, what will you be back next year? Will you apply again?" And I said, "No." I said, "I've already enrolled in agronomy. I've got my life planned out. If I go to veterinary school, I think it'll be grand. If I don't, I'll be fine. I'm going on." And so I thought I'd really shot myself in the foot on that deal. And that summer, I got a letter from the College of Veterinary Medicine. The year before, it had been a thin letter. Well, this one was a thick letter, and it stayed on the mantle there at the house for almost 2 weeks before I opened it. Because here I'd gotten my life organized where I'm going to go to agronomy, I'm roping, I'm dogging, I'm having a good time, I'm making a living with my horses and everything, and then this thing's sitting on the mantle. And so it kind of changed my life.
And so once you opened the letter and made that decision, you went on.
I had been accepted to veterinary school, and I go up there, and I was, once again, I'm the second youngest in the class. So my class here again was kind of the baby boomers that come in. The average class age in my freshman class was 29 years old. It went from 19 to 49 years old. And so they were two kids that were younger than I in the class, and both of them did very well, and we all three made it through. But see, I was 19, 20 when I started.
Pretty young.
Yeah. And you may or may not know, professional school, or you're out in the veterinary school, you get there at 7:30 in the morning and you leave at 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, and that's your whole world. You don't go back to campus, there's not a whole lot of involvement. Occasionally I go to a ball game or something like that, but you pretty well studied or were in class pretty well all the time, and had very little interaction with anyone but your class.
So who were some of your professors that you remember?
Oh, at OSU?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Dr. Pensier, marvelous man, still there, super person, mentor. Dr. Dwayne Peterson, head of the anatomy department. I mentioned injuring my eye. I missed 2 weeks of school right before the spring break, and luckily I had turned myself around a little bit in school and had applied myself and was sitting pretty well in the class at that time, and he set me aside and said, "Now Mike, we want you to go ahead and complete your education, but if you'd like to drop back a year or sit out a year, well, we'll find a place for you." And I appreciated that, but said if I ever leave, I may not come back. And and then Dr. Monin and Dr. Johnston were princes that were in the equine department there at the school. Dr. Friend was another one of the anatomy instructors that was very influential in shaping my professional career. And these people were not only they were my instructors, but once I got out in practice and I got involved in the state organization and went on to be the president of the Oklahoma Veterinary Medical Association at one point in 1990, I believe it was. And in doing so, these people were my colleagues and involved in the organization also. So I've known them for, the 40 years I've been out of school. I still call them friends and colleagues.
Directly out of school, did you set up the practice in Edmond, or what happened directly out of school?
I went to work for Dr. Tom Loafman in St. Louis, and he had a practice called Equine Medical Associates. And so I had just gotten married. I got engaged 1 week, graduated the next week, got married the next week, moved to St. Louis the next week. So my wife and I made 7 trips that year back to Oklahoma. We were both Oklahoma kids and homesick a little bit, I guess. So I moved back after a year. Dr. Loafman is still a very dear friend. And if you recall, I mentioned that advisor, it put me in the 21 hours. There's a little story there. We go over to dinner for the Loafmans, and Fred Lois, Tom's wife, is asking about college life and how it is now with the at 1972 at Oklahoma State University and the Flower Children and all this kind of stuff. And she says, "Who was your advisor?" And I said, "Well, I had this guy, and he wasn't a very good advisor at all. I didn't think very much of him. He stuck me in this, and she said, said, Mike, my mother's name is Lois, and my dad's name's Fred Lois. And a little bird chirps in my ear. I think I'm in trouble because her dad was my advisor. So now I've got a meeting when he comes for Thanksgiving. And so Fred meets me at the door and says, I understand you didn't think I was a very good advisor. And I said, well, you didn't help me. And he said, well, you made it. I said, well, I don't think you helped me all that much either.
Not because of you, but in spite of you.
In spite of you. But he was right. I mean, the old saying, the stayers will stay and the quitters will quit. And there was a tremendous number of, the baby boomers coming through. The campus population, I think, jumped by 30% or something. So, they just couldn't handle and not everybody was supposed to be a doctor of veterinary medicine, whatever. In my high school class, there were 5 kids that in the annual say, I'm going on to veterinary medicine. So, and I was the only one that made it. So.
Have you had any additional connection, et cetera, with the Cooperative Extension Service after you got out of vet school?
Oh yeah, even now, I've got here several of the handouts and what have you, and I've had them out for my pond. I've had them talk about pasture management. I've got 10 acres here in Oklahoma County, and how to utilize that, and I have a big garden and I have a big orchard at one time, and I'd never had those things. As a kid, we always had those, but never paid it that much attention other than I had to go and hoe or plow or pick or whatever. But got into it whenever. I guess you can't take the farmer out of the kid completely anyway. But my wife and I enjoy a big garden and learning how to do new things and what have you. So I've brought in soil samples and when Dad passed away in '84, I managed the farm and used the county extension as far as soil tests and how to manage some of the crops and do a better job, because I'd always relied on Dad to tell me, how deep you plant the wheat, when do you need to do this or when do you need to do that. So you find out later on in life that your parents were pretty smart people.
Is there anything else that you would like to share that you have thought about?
Well, within the context of my life and how the Extension Service has done for my community there in Comanche was tremendous. I mean, not just me, but in all my neighbor kids, the group of Stevens County livestock judges that we went all over the country. And here again, independence and self-reliance. The 4 of us would get in the back of a pickup, well, 5 of us, I guess. There's 5 of us. There's always an alternate. And we'd get in a car with one of the guys, or if Mr. Hobbs or one of them wasn't going to a particular fair day, or what do they call them? Whenever they'd have a short course out at some farm or ranch or whatever.
Field day.
Field days, yeah. And they'd have livestock judging contests. Well, we'd go all over the state and did that for a couple of 3 years, I guess. And our team won a contest going to Kansas City, and Bill Robertson and I, we were going to the share the fun, or no, up to the state fair, and Mr. Hobbs says, y'all need to go into do something else besides what you're going up for, because I can't justify you being there by just going for this. She said, okay, well, whatever you say. He says, "You're going to be in the cotton judging contest." Neither one of us had anything to do with cotton. So on the way up there, we go through the manual about how to do it. And I'll be George if we don't win the cotton judging contest and win us a trip to Kansas City.
So tell us about the trip to Kansas City.
Oh, yeah. That was an experience too. We caught the train there in Duncan, Oklahoma.
Back up just a little bit. What year was this, or how old were you?
Oh, it had been 64 probably, and I was probably 15, 16. And we had played a ball game that night at Warwick, Oklahoma, and one of the other boys on the judging team had got his nose broke. So he's black and blue and taped, and having trouble breathing and everything. And so we load onto this train, and so we're so psyched and everything, and I'm still smelly from the football game, and so we get to Kansas City and attend the American Royal, and as boys would be, we go around and check out all the things to be done, and I remember on the way back on the train we didn't want it to end, so the conductor's wanting us to be in our seats and be nice and not be roaming the train. Well, we were roaming the train. We were finding every little nook and cranny and checking out all the cars and what have you. But good experience.
So who were the other young men that you went on that trip with?
Bill Robertson,
Mm-hmm.
Keith Kelman, and Bobby. I think his name was Bobby Baker. Okay, and we were livestock judges from way back, and then Robertson and I won our trip with the cotton judging.
And luckily had read the manual in the back seat of the car.
Yeah, and he had some. Mr. Hobbs was sharp enough to have some staples there for us to pull and learn how to do. I never knew how to pull staples cotton, but I sure learned it on the trip up there.
Describe that. I've never heard of. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, in grading cotton, you look at not only the quality of the cotton, but also the length of the fiber. So to pull a staple, you take it and you pull it this way, and then you hold it, and then you pull it this way, and then the length of the staple is how you judge the quality. Then the brightness and how much trash is in the sample and all those kinds of things, and you put it together, and this is a grade of cotton. And same kind of a deal. I'm going to, we were in the Share of the Fun, was invited up there, and Mr. Hobbs says, well, you just can't be here just for the Share of the Fun. You've got to do something while you're up here, so I'm going to enter you in the driver safety contest. And okay, what I have to, well, here's the manual. So on the way up, I'm reading the manual. I've been driving a tractor since I was 7, so I knew a little bit about driving and what have you, but I didn't know what was involved in it. And so I had to read the owner's manuals and the driver's license manual or the regulations. And so I sit back and I watch these other dudes, what mistakes they were, and then I get in the car. I mean, his car I'd never driven before, and how to parallel park and all these kinds of things. And well, he's not getting close enough, so I would really get close and I get an extra point. I ended up being the state champion safety driver. And so it was, I even won a watch for that. Still have it.
You still have it?
Still have it.
He did you a lot of favors by pushing you a little bit.
Oh yeah, he was a great guy. Great guy.
Going back, there was a name that you couldn't remember, and it may not come to mind at this point either. But on the People to People tour, there was a chauffeur, an agent, or I think maybe a state.
He was
yes.
Ira Haller.
There you go. Thank you. That name was on the tip of my tongue too, and
Yep.
I could not think of that. Holler.
Yep. And then the lady was a tall, blonde lady, and her name, it'll come to me also, but she was a very, very nice lady, and and to put up with us 55 kids. And Mr. Holler, he was an all business kind of a guy, and seems like her name was Helen. But anyway, I remember we're trying to board there in New York, and we got our banner across in front of us. They're taking the picture. He's going to take the picture of us there and LaGuardia to go to Europe, you know. And there's this guy comes off the plane, you know, he comes by and he said, "Hey, you parlez-vous en français?" And he just keeps yakking and going on, and we're going to catch the plane. And so Mr. Holler gets over and pulls in and get out of the way. And so he got our picture, and we got on the plane. So everybody said, "Don't think our people got off on a good turn there." With that Frenchman anyway. But I don't think it was a big deal. I mean, it was, but it was a great trip. Got to see a lot of wonderful country and different cultures.
Wonderful experience for that era
Oh
to
gosh.
have that opportunity at that age.
Yeah.
Which is
I think it was.
tremendous.
I think it opened the eyes of a lot of the people that we interacted with. To see what we were involved with and discuss, you know, they wanted to know what, you know, about our farm, about what we did, even though we were kids and we didn't really interact with kids that much. But it was liberating to see that the people were interested in the United States and actually had a positive concept of the United States. Even back there, it's a place they wanted to go to if they had the opportunity to go. And I think that's something that we miss today. A lot of people think that everything's bad and corrupt and in the United States, but it's a pretty darn good place. And you get that same context of saying Oklahoma as opposed to, say, California, you know. But you got to remember that half the Californians came from Oklahoma. So it is good for people to travel. It's good for people to interact with other peoples. And I think if they do that, there will be less conflict. It's interesting to listen to some of the documentaries over World War II that we've had because of the 70th anniversary of D-Day, and some of the comments that those guys said. They were the enemy. They weren't people. I was there to kill those people. Today, that same person, and you got to do that. I understand that from my friends that have been to war, that say that they had to put that barrier. It couldn't be that I'm killing Johnny or I'm killing Jose or whatever. It's the enemy. But I think by putting a face on it prior to that time, and possibly some of our leadership could have that same interaction, we may not have to have the conflicts that we do.
Dr. Johnston, any final thoughts before we?
No, just the gratitude that I have for 4-H and the experiences I had as a kid. I still have my yearbook or my record book that I laboriously worked through as a senior student in my aunt's assistant in her math class. And I redid the whole thing my final year, and I'm very glad I did. I put a lot of pictures and things in it, and anecdotal things that it's a hoot to pull out and show my kids. They said, "You had hair back then, Dad?" And I said, "Yes," and it was blonde. And so some of the things that I did as a kid, you know, with the horses and the cows and the bugs. I still have my entomology display. It's in my front room, in the coffee table there in our front room, and there's bugs in there that are 50, 60 years old that I contested here at the state fair back in the early 60s. So it's been a very positive influence on me and hopefully on my family and my community.
You've shown to be a great product of the 4-H program.
Appreciate it.
We thank you for your time,
Anytime.
and we appreciate you volunteering to come in and visit with us. It's been a pleasure to interview.
Well, I always have fun talking.
Thank you, sir.